Hello everyone and welcome to another video on Our Own Devices. I'm Jean Messier and today we're having a look at a modern version of an old quack medical device. This is a Derma-Wand, a modern miniaturized version of what is known as a violet ray or violet wand machine, itself a subtype of electrotherapy machine or medical battery. Now, I've gone over the history and design of these devices in more detail in previous videos, links in the description, but very briefly, electrotherapy machines became very popular in the late 19th and early 20th centuries and were based on the pseudoscientific notion that electricity carried some sort of life force or vital energy, and that its application to the body could treat or even cure pretty much any ailment, from skin complaints to nasal congestion, infertility, impotence, rheumatism, hemorrhoids, brain fog, and even cancer. Initially, these were large, elaborate devices intended for use by medical professionals, but later, cheaper, more compact home batteries for personal use were developed. While these devices varied widely in size and design, they were typically variations on the Ruhmkorff, Houdin, D'Arceval, Tesla, and other high-frequency induction coils. In the simplest version, a step-up transformer coil was connected to a spring-loaded interrupter, basically an oscillator doorbell circuit, which continuously opened and closed the circuit to vary the current to the coil and allow it to step up the low-voltage DC current from a battery or low-frequency AC current from the mains into high-voltage, high-frequency current, typically between 1 to 2 kilovolts and 4 to 10 kilohertz. Output voltage was controlled either by a variable resistor on the primary side of the circuit or a sliding iron core inside the induction coil, which adjusted its inductance. Now, early electrotherapy machines largely used metal electrodes, but by the late 19th century, these started being increasingly replaced by so-called violet ray wands, with some of the first versions being developed by American inventors Frederick Strong and Arnold Snow in the 1890s. These were effectively Geissler tubes, first introduced by German physicist and glassblower Heinrich Geissler in 1857, sealed glass discharge tubes fitted with electrodes and filled with low-pressure gas. While some European violet ray machines were filled with noble gases like neon, most North American machines used ordinary air, which, being composed mainly of nitrogen and oxygen, emits a discharge glow on the blue-purple end of the visible light spectrum, hence the name. These tubes came in a variety of shapes and sizes for applying electricity to different parts of the body, including flat or rake-shaped versions for external use, or narrower tubes for insertion into the mouth, ears, nose, and other orifices. There were also attachments designed to generate ozone that could be inhaled to treat lung diseases. Now, violet ray machines became especially popular following endorsements by American clairvoyant Edgar Cayce, who counted among his clients the likes of Thomas Edison, George Gershwin, and Woodrow Wilson. And as it happens, I have an original violet ray machine here, manufactured by the Fitzgerald Manufacturing Company of Torrington, Connecticut. This firm was founded in 1906 by one Patrick Fitzgerald and mainly manufactured electrical appliances and automotive components like toasters, battery connectors, home massagers, gaskets, hair dryers, and electric horns. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a manufacturing date for this particular unit, but the heyday of this style of machine was around the mid-1920s to the mid-1930s. And I love how the data plate includes the very helpful warning, do not use machine in bathtub or when the body is connected with a water sewer or gas pipe or standing on wet floor. Inside the lid, we have our discharge tube and an insulated bakelite handle with the tube slotting in as so. This appears to be a very basic model since others I have seen online and in museum collections had clips on the lid for additional electrode shapes. We also have a plug and cable to connect the machine to the mains, and finally a leaf spring vibrator or interrupter with an adjustment knob. There is no on-off switch, so as soon as we plug this in, the interrupter knob starts buzzing, and it actually takes quite a bit of finesse to adjust this knob and obtain a reliable discharge. And here you can see the distinctive violet discharge that gives these machines their name, and that this is perfectly safe and not at all uncomfortable to apply to the body. Indeed, while manufacturers and advocates ascribe various healing properties to the mysterious violet rays themselves, in reality, the main function of these tubes was to reduce the output current to make it much safer to apply to the body. You'll also often hear it said that these emitted ultraviolet light, which can be used in the treatment of various disorders including lupus vulgaris and jaundice, but in reality, only quartz glass can transmit ultraviolet light, while most of these tubes were made out of Pyrex or soda glass, which is opaque to ultraviolet light. And if we undo these screws and remove the lid, we can see the two primary components of this circuit, the first being the induction coil. This comprises two wire coils nested one inside the other and an iron core to boost inductance, with the secondary coil having more windings than the primary so that the voltage increases, i.e. the coil acts as a step-up transformer. And you'll notice that the iron core is made up of a bundle of smaller rods. This is a form of laminated core which helps prevent the formation of large eddy currents, which can reduce the efficiency of the transformer. Normally, the spring-loaded contact on the interrupter is closed, allowing AC current from the mains to flow into and energize the primary winding of the coil. This, in turn, turns the coil into an electromagnet, which draws down the spring contact, opens the circuit, and de-energizes the coil. The contact then springs back up, closes the circuit, and the cycle repeats, opening and closing the circuit at high frequency and creating a continuously varying voltage that allows the transformer to step up the 120 volts from the mains to around 1 to 2 kilovolts. You might recognize this as nearly identical to the circuit in the Ford Model T ignition or trembler coil we looked at in a previous video, link in the description. And just like that circuit, this includes a wrapped foil and paper condenser or capacitor, which serves two main functions. Firstly, when the interrupter opens, a hot spark tends to jump across the contacts, which can very quickly wear them out. Well, secondly, because that spark still allows current to flow through the primary coil, its magnetic field collapses relatively slowly, which limits the output of the secondary coil. And the condenser solves both of these problems handily. So when the contact opens, the capacitor discharges and causes current to flow in the opposite direction than it was before, which eliminates the sparking and also causes the magnetic field in the primary coil to collapse very quickly, increasing the output of the secondary coil. Now, this style of capacitor tends to degrade rapidly with age, which is the reason these old violet ray machines tend to produce a weak or intermittent discharge. Now, getting back to our main story, by the late 1930s, early 1940s, violet ray machines were really on their way out, especially as the major manufacturers switched over their production lines to material for the war effort. This meant that by the end of the war, there were very few manufacturers left. And in 1951, one of the very last, Master Appliances of Marion, Indiana, filed a libel suit against a client who accused them of false advertising in terms of the effectiveness of their products. In 1955, the North Indiana District Court ruled against the company and fined them $2,000, and soon after, the FDA banned the sale of violet ray machines for medical use. In response, most manufacturers switched to marketing these devices as leak detectors for neon signs and other industrial applications. Electrotherapy units were also developed into diathermy machines for deep tissue heating and subcutaneous electrical nerve stimulation or TENS machines, both of which are still widely used in physiotherapy to this day. However, violet ray machines in their original form continue to be sold in small numbers to private buyers as sex toys and to estheticians for skincare, which finally brings us to the Derma-Wand that we have here. The documentation that came with this device states that it was manufactured or distributed by Omega 5 Technologies Incorporated of Hamilton, Ontario, which no longer appears to be in business. However, the Derma-Wand brand still exists, marketed by Brand Street Market LLC of Oldwick, New Jersey. And while I also don't have a manufacturing date for this unit, given the very charming early computer fonts used in the accompanying documentation, I'm going to guess this was made sometime in the late 1990s or early 2000s. So this is considerably more compact than the 1920s version we just had a look at, and has very few external features and controls. A clear plastic globe at the front, a power adjustment knob at the back, and a power cable. And if we plug this in, we can see that it produces the same type of electric discharge as the older machine, though since the glow is reddish-orange rather than purple, this tube is likely filled with neon. So originally, this casing was bonded together and not designed to be opened, but for the sake of this video, I've taken the liberty of cutting it apart to show you the internals. Right, so going left to right, we have the neon discharge tube, the induction coil, and a circuit board with 2 capacitors, a potentiometer, 3 diodes, 4 resistors, and a silicon-controlled rectifier, or SCR. And this appears to be basically a solid-state version of the circuit in the old violet ray machine we looked at, only instead of a mechanical vibrator, it uses the SCR to rapidly switch the input current to drive the induction coil. Right, so how does the Derma-Wand actually work? How does it help treat skin conditions? Well, according to the documentation that came with this unit, this performs 4 main functions. 1, it produces a localized zone of enriched oxygen, a natural cleanser created by Mother Nature. 2, it provides a healthy environment for the replacement of the acid mantle after cleansing. 3, it provides an effective massage, a stippling action like thousands of tiny fingers patting the skin. And 4, it exfoliates the skin, cleaning away the dead cells and debris, leaving a clean palette for new growth to occur. In reality, though, only the first and third of these claims really holds any weight at all, with the enriched oxygen that the documentation speaks of being ozone, which does have mild antimicrobial properties, but that's because it's toxic. And breathing in large quantities of it, as people used to do with older violet ray machines, and still do under the guise of ozone therapy, is likely to be harmful, and there is no evidence that it has any positive effect on respiratory ailments. Secondly, while this does have a mild massaging action, it's really not strong enough to carry out any sort of serious exfoliation. And finally, high-frequency electricity can dry out the skin, which could be useful for treating certain skin conditions such as acne. But overall, there's really no evidence that machines like this do much of anything. Indeed, according to the accompanying documentation, the Derma-Wand was intended to be used along with a proprietary anti-blemish cleanser and age control serum, which I suspect probably has much more of an effect on the user's skin than the wand itself. But this sort of snake oil has been around for a very long time and will probably continue to be sold until the end of human civilization. As they say, there's a sucker born every minute. And that, dear viewers, is a brief overview of the fascinating forgotten world of violet ray machines. I really enjoy covering some of these quack devices. They're really quite a fun change of pace. And if you enjoy learning about them, please check out my previous videos on medical batteries and the Mansfield patent water finder, links in the description. Also, if you're ever in Minneapolis, St. Paul, I would highly recommend the Museum of Medical Quackery inside the Science Museum of Minnesota, an absolutely fascinating exhibit in an incredible museum. Indeed, one of the best I've ever visited. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time in another video where we'll look at yet more dubious medical gadgets and other devices just like this one. Until then, I'm Jean Messier from Our Own Devices. Have a great day.